Ladies and gentlemen, today I am going to prove that the furry fandom has been adult-oriented and essentially NSFW since practically day one. This video is going to be way important than the other furry video. I definitely did not get to cover what I'm going to cover here today in the other one, so please pay attention. This one is going to shed light on how furries are a danger to, I don't know, VRChat and the internet and the world as a whole. Now, to make this easier for everybody, I put together this little video collage thing, I guess, like a slideshow, and I'm gonna do it in the old-fashioned style, or I'm gonna stand over here, turn off the world volume, and I'm gonna pull it up. So just right here.
Of characters.
Nope. Okay. So you should be seeing a cursed image of the Mr. Donald Duck to my left. Now, I paused it because I have to talk about this. Everyone and their mother is going to be like, oh, well, the furry fandom started with, Disney and stuff like that. Now, even the video I'm referencing kind of mentions that, yeah, the very, very beginning of, furries, furry characters on their own, did start with Disney. And, yeah, that's probably true. However, furry characters aren't the furry fandom. There's a big difference, right? Like, the Disney characters, and another dumb shit I hear from people, like the Indians wearing, headdresses and stuff like that, and, pretending to be animals or something, and then, the ancient Egyptians, the god with, a dog head, I guess his name is Anubis or something. These people compare that stuff to the furry fandom, which is obviously not a legitimate comparison. I think they're actually brain dead making such a stupid comparison. Either way, it's not part of the furry fandom, and this video is going to be about the furry fandom, because, they're the problems, and so we have to focus on that. Anyway, with that being said, I have some notes here. I'm going to go over this with y'all. Shouldn't take too long. But one last note, like I said in the last video, there is a difference between supposed, furries or furry fans, like people who don't use the avatars in fursuits, and people who do, also known as furry lifestylers, as the documentary says. Now, these dedicated furries or furry lifestyles, I believe, are all Zoophile Gooners, and I'll get to that later. First, I'm going to prove that the fandom is adult-oriented and sexual. Anyway, let's get on with it real quick.
Characters.
Oh, and this is, I'm going to link this video in the description. This is Frederik Knudsen's Down the Rabbit Hole furry video. I've probably referenced it before, but I don't believe I played any of its footage in the last video. Anyway.
Style was based off of similarly cartoonish humanoid depictions of animals, starting in the latter half of the 1800s, which would come to be known as the funny animal style. But as this was occurring, post-war countercultural...
Just don't forget the funny animals thing, because you'll get that reference a lot. And yes, it does look innocent and plain on its own, initially, sure. But again, that's not what it turned into, and that's definitely not the beginning of the actual fandom. Don't forget that, it's very important.
Movements were taking notice of the trend. One of these was the underground comics scene, stylized with an X, which often utilized a similar style to Disney's family-friendly cartoons in order to parody it by putting original characters into various adult situations, almost always involving violence, drugs, sex, or a combination of the three. These would be printed and distributed by independent publishers, allowing them to avoid the content guidelines of traditional publications. The funny animals were not exempt from this treatment, and they would occasionally make appearances. One of these independent works, however, would reach a popularity beyond that of its contemporaries.
Now, just before it reveals what it is, don't forget what it said. It said this particular piece of media reached such a level of popularity that it essentially got so much attention, it essentially started the interest for this kind of thing. And what is this? Y'all have heard me say this so many times. Get ready.
A comic strip called Fritz the Cat, which began printing in 1965. It depicted the eponymous anthropomorphic character, a disillusioned and depressed philanderer, in a city populated by other human-like animals. This character proved so popular that an 80-minute-long animated movie was created based on the intellectual property, independently produced and rated X.
Now, you see, it's rated X for reasons I'm going to show in just a moment. In case you don't know what rated X is, it's, very lewd, yeah?
Making a large return on investment.
Okay, so here's what I did, right? Now, I think the initial comic for Fritz the Cat. It was like 1965, I believe. That's a long time ago, folks. None of us were born yet, just FYI. Like, that's a long-ass time ago, okay? And don't forget, this did come after the Disney stuff. Now, what I went and did is I pull up like a PDF of the actual comic, and as I've said verbatim, this is the oldest furry comic I could find, especially for like North America on its like in its whole, right? This is the comic right here that started it all. As far as I'm concerned, as far as my research could find, this is it. Now, the very first like strip or I don't know issue of Fritz the Cat, he was actually not anthropomorphized. He was just a regular cat that could talk, and it was pretty wholesome. I think I don't remember. Don't quote me, but that's not what I'm talking, because that's not technically a furry, so I'm not worried about that. But as you can see, this is how the comic starts. You know, he just comes home with. This is supposedly his sister, by the way. I think I read that somewhere. It's like a girl cat anyway. So they come home, you know, big deal. He takes off her hat and her scarf and her coat, and then it kind of keeps going, you know, next to the shoes, and then I guess like the shirt, and now she's naked. Now he's covering her tits, and on the very bottom you can see he's like pinning her to the floor just to take off her skirt, I guess. And I had to censor it because there's nudity, there's like nipples and stuff. I had to censor it, so hopefully nothing bad happens. But he keeps going. You could see in the last one, he just full blown takes off her pants, and then at the very top here, it concludes. You see she's fully naked, you know, rips off the last of the clothing. He jumps on top of her, and then I don't know if y'all could read that, but it says there. Here, let me move that. It says right there. Be patient. I gotta get these fleas or whatever. So that's the punchline. Ha ha, funny. You know, walked in my house with my sister, ripped off all of her clothes just to, you know, inspect for fleas, quote unquote. Anyway, the next picture you see on the bottom is actually taken straight from the film that was just mentioned, the X-rated one. Now, within 10 minutes of the film starting, including the intro and all that stuff, he takes like 3 furry bitches in some weird like hippie drug party, right? Takes 3 of these furry bitches to the bathroom and, you know, does stuff to them. I mean, it looks pretty obvious. And just so you know, it does look like a human from this perspective, but trust me, that character was like a cat, I think, or a dog. I don't remember, but you could go see for yourself. It's on some sketchy website where you can watch it for free. It's really old. It's kind of outdated, but yeah, this is like the first like furry film of that fandom I could find anywhere. So don't forget how it started, but let's move forward, please.
Inspired in part by Fritz the Cat, an independent project called Voodie was proposed by a pair of professional cartoonists.
Okay, so it's a professional cartoonist, not random people. So these are the propositions they're making these people on what they want in their comics, okay? And it said in part inspired by Fritz the Cat. No, it was most likely fully inspired by it, but anyway.
They explained their logic and plans in a proposal which they printed on February 29th, 1976, a place where you can just wig out.
Okay, so it was a huge skip right there. The first slide they just went over like the publications, like how they were going to do it, you know, like, and like the actual like system and how they're going to put the pages together and blah, blah, blah. Bunch of irrelevant stuff that we're not going to talk about. Now, this is the second page as noted by the 2 here. You'll notice something at the bottom is important, but
without having to think about the usual
they keep going.
Considerations. No censorship, mixed media, offset,
no
Vimeo,
censorship,
Ditto, silkscreen, block print, silly putty, whatever you can think of. No requirements except that you keep those serious people as much out of it as possible. Humans are okay, but only when they're funny animals too. Sex and violence is okay, as long as it's not human sex and violence.
Yes, you see that? Sex and violence is okay, as long as it's not human sex and violence. And the note where it said, but only if they're funny animals too. Well, obviously humans aren't furries or funny animals or whatever, so you get the point. They specifically requested these like these anthro characters to be in these violent and sexual scenes. This is how Voodie is called, right? Like this Voodie, this underground comics movement started. Well, maybe not underground comics, Voodie specifically, but it goes from here, and you'll see this in just a moment.
As the CFO was growing, small, funny animal-focused independent magazines, or...
Oh, before we continue, the CFO is like, it started by some guy named Mark Merlino in like the early 1970s, where this grown-ass man who's literally like 50 plus, he has like gray hair and everything, I guess did these weird parties in his room where, I guess they're more like screenings where he would just show like bootleg animes and stuff like that. Very weird. Later, I have in my notes here, later it says, at some convention called LosCon, I don't know. In 1975, one of the screenings led way to the creation of this CFO, or the Cartoon Fantasy Organization, where more and more of this stuff happened. And yeah, they started hosting these furry parties in their hotel rooms, like at the science fiction conventions. And I think later on, 10 years later, a convention called WesterCon in 1985, they shared some furry videos, like some weird Olympic one. And this is apparently where they came up with their fandom's name, the furry thing. Like first they tried to call it fuzzies or something, but then it became furry. Even the video I link in the description says it's like a hazy origin, and it's like not a guaranteed thing. Anyway, as you can see by the picture here, it very quickly descends into this degenerate stuff, but anyway.
Zines were entering production. They would feature both visual art and writing, but the former proved much more popular and would soon come to dominate them, especially as photocopying grew to be cheaper, more accessible, and of higher quality. Unlike APAs, these zines were available to the public, not only the contributing artists, and they helped strengthen interest in the fandom as they grew more prolific at the outset of the 80s. The quality of the art would vary greatly, with work submitted by both professionals and amateurs of all skill levels, though almost all drew in a definitively cartoonish style. Here, the overlap between the anime and funny animal fandoms would become apparent, with much of the visual art featuring style choices and design clearly influenced by Japanese animation.
Don't worry
While
about
no
that.
metrics have been gathered, it's likely that a majority of these zines include pornography of funny animal characters.
Yep.
And some zines consisted primarily of this sort of content, though the ratio of pornographic to non-pornographic artwork varied widely between each zine. The people within it, furries. By the following year, room parties based on furry interests would become a regular occurrence at
So this is what I just mentioned, the room parties with the furries. So, as you can see by the picture, yeah, nice tits, right? But you'll see that this is how they advertise it. Like, these are like the little flyers they'd send out, right? But look.
Conventions, which became known as furry parties. What exactly occurred at these parties is not documented, but the promotional material was suggestive.
See?
One flyer from RoseCon in 1988 depicts a naked anthropomorphic character saying, "No ma'am, the morality and fandom party is next door." Other promotional material.
So he's like, yeah, oh, you're looking for like decency and morality? Fuck that. That's in the room over. We're a bunch of zoophile heathens over here. Yeah, fuck that shit.
Was often of a similarly risque nature. Eventually, interest in these parties grew to a point that the rooms couldn't contain them, and there was...
Now, before he continues, I just want to mention, this is probably the most important part of this whole video. This is how these furry parties were advertised. And so when you advertise it, you're reaching a very specific group of people, right? Showing interest in a very specific thing. Like, if that's the kind of art right there that attracts these people, then it's no wonder the fandom turned out to be the way it is today, folks. Like, come on. It's pretty obvious. This is why there's a bunch of Gooners everywhere. But anyway, he's about to say that this method of like advertising was so successful and they got so many people interested in going to the little furry parties that they're going to start the first furry convention.
Was a belief that the fandom had grown large enough that the room parties could be turned into a convention. And so, to test this theory, Merlino and O'Reilly reserved space with the Holiday Inn in Costa Mesa, California to hold what they named Confurence Zero. The convention was sparse, with basic events.
Okay, before they show it, I just want to mention, so he did say Confurence Zero. It's going to show the footage from the video that any of you could just YouTube right now, okay? And like I said at the beginning of the video, the furry fandom is adult-oriented. You could go to Frederik Knudsen's video and see the other footage from the actual furry parties, like before this, and you will see they're all adults. If you look at these people right here, these are grown-ass adults. I'm talking like 30 to fucking 50. Just like the Mark Merlino guy, who's even older than these people. But this is direct proof that the fandom is adult-oriented since day one. I mean, this is the first furry convention, folks, but look at this.
And sent nothing resembling a celebrity guest. Though only 65 people arrived, it was enough for the organizers to consider it a success.
Look at that guy juggling. The dude's like 50. He's like fucking 50.
And they took special note of the fact that 2 people dressed up as anthropomorphic animals, including one in leather fetish gear.
Okay, so he did say 2 people showed up in furry costumes. I'll show what that looks like in a second, but this is the first furry convention. You have some weirdo on stage dancing in what he just said, fetish gear. That's it. This is the kind of stuff that these people want. And so you'll see it just goes like that. Anyway, so I tried pulling up the video to see the second furry, and apparently that thing right there is it. It's very blurry because obviously it's like from, ancient ass camera from God knows when. You can obviously see the tail. He does not have any paws. He might have a wig on. I don't think he has ears either. It's hardly even a furry, especially compared to that thing next to it, but whatever. If you look at the video, which is about 15 minutes long, the whole thing is about that bamboy thing behind it, the thing in the fetish gear. And that second furry was shown for literally maybe 20 seconds in the whole video. Don't believe me? Go watch it. I might even link it in the description. I'm probably going to do that. Anyway, that should go away in a second.
That most of these games are...
Oh, so this is another video I am going to link in the description where he's showing that most of the fandom they're just a bunch of Gooners, and he just kind of proves it. He's going to use, Steam and Itch.io, I guess 2, gaming browsing things. You know what I'm talking about. Obviously, you know what the hell Steam is, but he's just going to kind of prove that. Here, just take a look.
NSFW related. Look up Furry on Steam, and the first results are all NSFW games.
Now, so he just looked up on Steam the term furry, and sure enough, sex games, right? Gooners.
Also, can we speak about the fact how the Reddit for YIF has more members
521k, look at that.
than the one for normal fur?
The furry, the actual furry one, you see that? 435k. How does the initial fandom's Reddit have 100k less than the NSFW furry Reddit? That shouldn't even be possible. The numbers speak for themselves. This just proves they're a bunch of Gooners.
Y'all really need to get some help, damn.
I agree. Oh, is that the end of it? Damn. That was fast. Alright, let me get rid of that. Alright, let me just turn the roll volume back on. Alright, so there's overwhelming evidence, absolutely, that these people are a bunch of zoophile Gooners. Now, why do I say zoophiles specifically? It's because these people, the fursuiters, the lifestylers, whatever you want to call them, any of them who use the avatars or the fursuits IRL have crossed over, right? They have crossed this line into nearly mental illness. I'd say they've crossed over into absolute obsession over this fandom. They use the avatars, they use the fursuits, they make it their whole personality. Go to their social media, it's just a bunch of furry garbage all over it, right? They make it their personality. In VRChat, you click on them, obviously they're in the avatar. If they have VRC+, they have a furry icon. Their Discord is named after, a furry. It also has a furry, profile pic. Go to their Twitter and stuff, it's just a bunch of furry shit, right? So, these are the kinds of people who are they come here, and obviously, because humans are just sexual in nature, these kinds of degenerate morons are the kinds of people that are going to end up ERPing, and when they do, not if they do, when, they're not going to change avatars. There is, a bloody sea of NSFW furry avatars to choose from. There's, in no way, shape, or form would it make any sense for these people to just randomly switch to a human one to do their dirty deeds instead of the furry ones they most likely already have access to. And so when these people do that and these avatars or fursuits IRL, it is simulating zoophilia. And by the way, the modern definition of zoophilia, that the one we're referring to, is a sexual attraction to animals or in this context, animal-like parts, or depictions of animals. These things are all based off of real animals, which is why they look like a bunch of dogs, cats, wolves, etc. Now, some of them are like fantasy animals, right? Like they say they're based off of dragons or shit like that, but some people say dragons were real. But that doesn't matter because they still share the similarities, right? Like covered in scales or furs. They have claws, tails, ears, horns. All these things are just properties of animals, not humans. Not humans. And in the last video, if you saw me making that comparison, there was like a deer Rex. It didn't look anything like a human, right? So yeah, when you're bending these things over and like banging them from behind, it's just an animal's ass. It's just like a dog's or horse's ass. Like, honest to God, folks, it doesn't leave much to the imagination. If you're getting off to that genuinely, by definition, you're a zoophile, okay? So that being said, the fandom's only getting worse. It started out horribly. It became worse very quickly, and there's not much else to say about it. It's an adult-oriented fandom, so furries should not be in public. Kids or minors should absolutely not be in the furry fandom. If you see this, they have obviously been groomed, right? And just for the naysayers about like the Disney thing, by the way, if they're fans of Disney and that's what supposedly turned him into a furry, why don't they use the Disney avatars instead of the modern day furry fandom avatars? See, that doesn't make any sense, right? So that doesn't convince me at all. I don't believe these people. I think they're lying. A lot of these guys are going to be like, oh, I'm not a zoophile. I don't look at the furry porn. Well, why is there 500 plus K people in the NSFW Reddit as opposed to the normal furry Reddit? Like I said in the last video, the furry porn and all that stuff is made by these people for these people. They all did it. They're all guilty. You can't trust them. Stay away from them. You're going to get virtual like rabies or AIDS if you continuously interact with them. So please, if you see a furry in like public, tell them they should go to either their dedicated furry lobbies or they should get age verified and go to age verified instances, because in no way, shape, or form should minors be a part or even loosely associated with these disgusting heathens. So, you have my blessing, and I am with you anytime you vote kick, shame, or even crash your local furry.